Mm. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Q&A session with one of our mentors. Today we have Julie Havelund. I don't know if I can pronounce her name right, Julie. And we're really excited to have you here. We have tons of questions for you as well. For everyone on the chat, as you know, the session is being recorded. So please, if you do have questions for Julie, do pop them in the chat and we'll get to them. I know most of you have already submitted the questions ahead of time. And do use this opportunity to introduce yourselves to each other, so you're all in the group. I know I can see some names have been more active on Slack, but this recording will be going over to the channel once it's done. With that said, Julie, thank you so much for sharing more of your time with us and sharing your experience on this quick Q&A. We hope it gives everyone an opportunity to know more about you and give some glimpse on your experience. So with that said, would you give us an introduction about what is it that you currently do professionally, and what have been some of the steps on your career trajectory to date that took you here, that brought you here, basically?
Sure. Hi, well, thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to be part of this program. So my name is Julie. I'm based in Brighton in UK, and I'm a dance artist and teacher and producer, kind of jack of all trades within performing arts. So I have a background in dance studies and dance anthropology and dance ethnography throughout my BA and MA. And then I ventured a little bit into aerial circus and worked with dramaturgy, doing dramaturgy for a circus artist for a while. And then recently have moved more into producing as well as doing some stage management. So since pandemic, really, since having a baby a year and a half ago, my work kind of organically has shifted a little bit more into the sort of producing and dramaturgy side and the teaching more than performing. Not to say that I don't want to perform, that's kind of how it naturally happened. So I still do lots of different things. I have a portfolio career, so I have only once worked in a full-time job and realized that's not really for me. So I enjoy this kind of multitude of different kind of jobs, and it allows me to kind of spread my energy across different projects. So I'm producing for a company called Thrive Dance. It's a small dance company, and I'm doing stage management for them as well. And then kind of alongside all this, I work as a yoga teacher, and that's something that kind of feeds into my creative practice very much and kind of helps me, I think, keep my feet fairly grounded.
I love that. Yeah. So I think one of the things you mentioned, you had a baby. So some people have asked, how do you experience mothering and working in the creative sector? Like, how do you find the balance?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning that. So my son is 18 months in 2 days. And I started working again sort of fully after 9 months. After 6 months, I started slowly doing some sort of, I guess, kid days really, but as a freelancer, a bit of teaching, a bit of sort of keeping in touch with clients, students. And like mumhood is sort of mum guilt is definitely a thing in mumhood, I think. And I think for me, what I realized is that you don't really get to know what feels right for you in terms of the balance of working and being with your child before you really have the child in your hands. I thought I would be back working after 6 months, sort of almost full time. And that would have been in January, and Christmas was approaching last year, and I just had this feeling like I was not ready to leave my son in childcare. So it was really hard because I committed to saying to my collaborators and sort of my students, my clients, everyone I was working with, to say, I'll be back again in January, and actually to say, what, I've had to really sit with kind of what this feels like, and I actually feel like I enjoy my work, but I also really enjoy being with my son, and I'm going to take another 2 months. And I think from the outside, what I learned is that 2 months feel like nothing from the outside. I think people go, well, why another 2 months? Like, what does it matter? Why don't you start now in January? But actually 2 months in a sort of 6-month-old baby's life is huge, and so much happens. So I'm really glad I made that choice. And I made the choice that I work full-time 3 days a week. And then I have 2 days where I work in the mornings and evenings, but I'm with him during the day. And then weekends, my kind of work kind of varies. But because of what I do, I often end up working on weekends. But I do have at least 3 full days a week with him, which feels hugely important. But I know that lots of different creatives work kind of differently around the child schedule. Some people work just in the evening. so far I'm feeling like this kind of constellation feels like it's working for me. But if for anyone who's a mother, there's an organization called Mothers Who Make. I just joined one of their meetings literally 2 hours ago. And it's an organization for kind of connecting mums who also create artistically, and having kind of support networks like that, as well as I Like Networking, really kind of helps me just feel supported by other kind of creatives who are going through something a little bit similar. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, someone had actually had a follow-up question, which was about Mothers Who Make, because I know that that's on your bio. I think for sure having, support and community is really important, which I think sort of a segues nicely into our second question, which was again about the way you created your career. So you've had, as you said, a portfolio career. And there was a question if you had ever panicked about not having a job, or especially during the pandemic, how to sort of future-proof yourself, or how do you navigate that tension? Because I think for a lot of people, it feels very insecure, right? Or
Yeah,
yeah,
it's really precarious living a life like that. I think what I realized though is I did an administration role once full-time in a huge arts organization, and realized that I really enjoyed the arts that was being produced there or programmed there, but I didn't enjoy my role because it felt so, for me, that felt so completely away from the creative side that I wanted to. So I realized that I need to feel creative in the kind of work that I do. So I think that fuels me to kind of keep going with the freelance and portfolio career. I was really blessed that through my yoga teaching, I've been able to sustain myself throughout the pandemic when there was lockdowns and I couldn't leave the home. So that was a huge privilege to be able to teach from home and do more online work and do some online residencies. And at the time of the pandemic, I was also serving on Equity's dance committee. Equity, for those of you who don't know, is the Union for Performing Arts, and I was on the committee there. So I'm really passionate about sort of advocacy and activism within the industry. Kind of another reason why I joined I Like Networking, because I feel like stuff like this is so important to kind of hold each other up and create kind of best practice. But for me, having kind of a widespread, as sort of sporadic and chaotic as that might be when you're dealing with like invoices and admin and organization of it, but having a really widespread. So I teach yoga, and I'm a dramaturg and a producer and I'm a teacher and I'm a choreographer and I'm a performer and do lots of different things. For me, that means that if one thing fails, if one company loses their funding and they can't sort of take me on anymore, or if a studio closes or a theatre closes, I still have other sources. So sort of really practically, I've kind of spread myself across lots of different things. Yes, I guess sort of practically it makes sense for me that I have a sort of lifeline in different places. But also I really enjoy connecting with different people. And yeah, I think for some that might be a little bit too chaotic, but I find it quite inspiring.
I love that. And yeah, we have lots of questions about self-producing, really. So someone wrote in a way that I really love, so I'll read it out loud for you. Self-producing is a monumental task. Have you got any tips or tricks for emerging self-producing artists? How do you successfully do that and still have enough time to create? I think that's a question for artists across the board, not just dance or choreography.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's probably a theme for a lot of people here. So
Yeah. Oh gosh, such a good question. And I definitely, I mean, I'm still learning. I find, I graduated from a VA and 10 years ago, literally. And I'm still learning this. I think there are a couple of things. I think generally, the more support that you can get, the better. I had a mentor when I was just finishing uni. I did actually 2 lots of 1-year residencies at a place called Space Clarence Mews in East London. And so I did a program where I had mentoring throughout the whole year. So it wasn't mentoring in terms of sort of how to write that's council application or how to do my tax expenses, but it was mentoring in terms of creatively my vision and my kind of directions, my practice. So I felt really supported there. And then I think it's about finding, there are so many different kinds of opportunities to find some kind of support or learning platforms, if you're an Equity member, like through Equity, for example, about how to organize your time and sort of time management in general and organizational skills. Because I think when you're self-producing, it can feel really lonely, regardless of your platform or the kind of the art form that you use. For me, it's being in a studio, and that can be, if you produce a solo work, so lonely if you're there for hours and hours in time. So finding networks, whether it's, you know, getting support about funding or getting support about how to manage your time or how to collaborate with others or how to anything else, getting that kind of support is really, really important, I think, because otherwise you can feel like you're a little bit alone and it can feel really overwhelming. And something I often did when I was doing my residency was to meet with a few other dance artists, and also had lots of kind of work to do in terms of, you know, contacting venues and programmers and getting other people involved and trying to sell your work. We would meet at a cafe somewhere with our laptops and kind of set 30-minute tasks. So we tell each other, okay, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to contact these 3 people with a proposal about programming my work for the next year. And then when the half an hour was done, we'd say, okay, how did that go for you? And the other person might have had another goal. So some kind of accountability, also because I get really distracted so easily, and I'm definitely a master of procrastination. So if I don't have someone to keep me kind of accountable, I'll just go off on a tangent and listen to Spotify all day. So yeah, I think if you have a mind that works like mine, meeting up with someone, or even if it's online, but having some kind of accountability, I think really helps.
Yeah, there's a group, an app called Groove, and it's free, and it's like an accountability, like a virtual co-working, and everyone logs in at specific time and do concentrated work together. And I agree. I think for everyone who works on their own as a freelancer, it's really important to understand your work rhythms and what you do well and what you don't, so you can help put, like, you know, things around you to support you. Because yeah, I'm the same. People always ask, like, how do you stay motivated? I'm like, I'm not motivated all the day. It's like I currently have COVID. Like, I'm not motivated to do almost anything right now. But you just do, like, you have, I don't know, you know, a system that works for you. And I think these conversations are important so people can see different strategies, right? So everyone needs to find something that works for them. But yeah, the community is definitely key. All right, so we have more requests for you. Do you have, sorry, wrong question. What opportunities are there for amateur dancers to break into more training and performance opportunities?
So I guess it depends what you mean by amateur dancer, but I guess someone who's not specifically trained at university. Or
Yeah.
There are lots of scratch nights. So if you're interested in producing your own work, even if it's not to be, you know, taken on tour and for kind of monetary purposes, there are lots of scratch nights that I, especially in London, but also across the country, that I did loads of when I was just starting to produce my own work after uni. Some of it is, you know, in sketchy places. I performed in pubs, you know, like really, really weird places. And some of it definitely lends itself more to sort of comedy or spoken word, or, you know, spoken poetry or something else. I find there are lots of sort of small platforms like this where you can get to show some work, for example, if that's what you're interested in. Similarly, go to class. There, if, you know, in the kind of cost of living crisis, if going to a drop-in class in a big fancy studio feels a bit unattainable, there are lots of the councils across the country that offer courses that are really heavily subsidized. I taught for Tower Hamlets for a long time, council there, and also for Morley College, which is funded by Lambeth Council. And the remit there is really to provide really high quality courses. They're normally 10 to 12 weeks at a time, across lots of different dance forms. I mean, especially in London, I think, in the boroughs that I worked, anything from like belly dancing to ballet to contemporary dance to flamenco to more urban dance forms. And that's a really accessible way to come to practice. And you might not be, you know, practicing in the poshest studios that are across London, but you get to really dance and experience the joy of dancing with others. And then another thing to look out for is lots of choreographers often have requests or call outs for community dancers to be part of their projects. Is often part of Arts Council funding kind of criteria that you engage the local community. So people like who've done this, yeah, Flex have done it, Luca Silvestrini, lots of different choreographers, for example. So if you look on either Arts News, which is the Arts Council England kind of service, Arts News often have call outs there, or Arts Admins, eDigest, they often have call outs, and there'll be things like getting involved with a project where you get training for free and you get to perform and you get to be part of a professional company that way. I did some work with Lucas Silverstream's Protein Dance and Rosemary Lee as well for Dance Umbrella, the Split Festival. And it was unpaid, but it was free training and it was a chance to perform and be with a really supportive community. So there definitely are things like this to look out for.
I love that. Those are really great resources. And I love arts admin. All right, Julie, we have more questions for self-producing people, I think. Okay. It's a twofold question, but I think you can try to answer as much as you can because I know we have a short time, but okay. How do I go about marketing myself as a choreographer or dance artist? And I think the follow-up for that is, how do I determine what my audience even is? Which is a good question.
Yeah, and it's hard, isn't it? Because if you, like me, end up doing lots of different things, what to sort of market yourself as. I've been to lots of sort of coffee mornings or artist gatherings and networking events where people go, oh, what do you do? And I go, well, I'm a dancer, but I'm also a choreographer, but I'm also a dance artist. I also produce, but I also do R&Ds, but I also sometimes facilitate, and you do so many different things. I find, for me, independent dance artist, it's a really nice kind of label to put on myself, that from there then I can start to market myself out, and then I can have a sort of an umbrella kind of category of different things that I do underneath that. I think the reason why it's so hard, and I've struggled with this a lot, this kind of marketing yourself or selling your own work, is because so often when we're self-producing, especially, we put like a heart and soul into it, and so often it's somewhere it will be kind of autobiographical, or there will be references to kind of our own experiences within the work. It's kind of implicit. So I think sometimes selling your work or promoting your work or marketing your work can be really hard because it can feel so kind of precious. And it's really easy to feel judged when I think you're marketing your own work. And what I find actually now that I'm a producer for a company where I have nothing to do with the artistic side of it, although I have lots of conversations with the choreographer, I don't have a say in terms of the sort of the artistic vision. I am there really to program the work, or produce the work rather. It's so much easier because I don't feel that attached to it. So what I learned from that experience of doing this producing for other people is to kind of detach myself a little bit from the work that I'm doing when I'm trying to market it or sell it to others, just to kind of not get so hurt by rejections, because I mean, I haven't even counted the rejections that I've had in the past, both from going to an audition, but also to try and sell my own work to other programmers. So that kind of little bit of distance, actually, I think is really useful, and allows you to be, your producer for your own work, but also to be the choreographer. So that helps. I completely blanked out on the second question.
Oh, this is great. The other question was like, how do you find out what your audience is, or how do you find your audience, I guess, for marketing yourself purposes?
Yeah. Well, that's really a question to you, isn't it? As the person making the work. I remember once I was talking to, I think it was Blue Elephant Theatre. I was performing some of my own work then with a company I ran for a while called Enterprise Project. And they were asking us about this question, who's your target audience? And I think we said, well, everyone can experience this. And we were sort of met with a, no, but that's not, that doesn't go here. What's your target audience? And it makes you really sit with the sort of questions around why you create the work that you do and who you're trying to impact and who you're trying to reach. I think sometimes it's really obvious, some work is specifically for care homes or specifically for children or younger audiences, or specifically audio described for people with disabilities. So, there can be different kind of avenues that feel more specific. But I think it's a really good question to sit with. I invite you who asked the question to really sit with it and think about the kind of choreographic approaches that you do, but more specifically, what you're trying to relay. Like, I always think when I create work, I'm doing it to try and make an impact and to try and provoke some kind of thought in the people that are watching it. Get some kind of reaction from it. Hopefully, audiences leave a piece that you created not just thinking, okay, well, that was a fun evening out, and on to the next thing. Hopefully they leave with a little bit of a taste of your kind of choreographic vision, and maybe a little bit of a different way of thinking about whether it's movement or something in society or something else completely. So really sit with the kind of crux of what is it that you're trying to convey? And I think through that, you'll find out actually who's it most relevant for. Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. Okay, I think we have time for the last one. So
Sure.
we have a question about not being an artist and a creator, but not being in London. Why did you make that choice? If it was a choice, and do you think it's possible to develop a sustainable career outside of London in that field?
Yeah.
I mean, clearly it
Yeah.
is, but yeah.
It's something I thought a lot about. So I'm from Denmark originally. I moved to UK 14 years ago, and I studied in Surrey and then moved to London after graduating, and then I lived there for 10 years. And even though in those 10 years that I lived there, I worked a lot in Tuscany, I worked a little bit in Denmark, a little bit in Ireland. So I did work, further away, and had a few shows in Nottingham and sort of across UK, but most of it was in London. So I had this idea in my head that, well, obviously to be a dance artist, you live in London. That's where the work happens. And yes, that is where a lot of work happens. But I think more than work is where a lot of sort of daily practice happens. So the only kind of real difference I realized is just the sort of sheer abundance of taking professional class in London. That's bigger. But there's such an abundance of work happening all across the country. And I was really sort of London blind, I think, thinking that this is where you have to be because this is the only place that creates work. And actually, I realized that there's so much resilience in artists and choreographers and makers living outside of London, because you kind of have to create your own networks there, and you have to create your own opportunities. So there's really beautiful work being made outside, which has been really nice to kind of discover. And I think somewhere I did kind of know this, but I felt a little bit, I felt like London was the only place to be. But for me, it was a bit weird. I moved in the middle of the pandemic, and I moved being pregnant as well. So it's a weird kind of time to move. But what I found is that there are some really strong communities here, and there are lots of dancers here. So it's definitely possible. I also know from people working in Florence, where I worked a lot, that a lot of the work that's being made there and the opportunities there are really artists coming together and going, okay, we want this specific choreographer to come and lead a workshop. How can we scramble money together to get them to come and lead a workshop? Or we want to create a festival of dance. How can we sort of put our minds together? So I think it asks for a little bit more kind of initiative from artists living in an area that's not London to kind of create those opportunities, which, is not a bad thing. It's a really beautiful thing. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Julie. All right. Final question is, how do you, I think you spoke to this about, but like, how do you define your success, and how do you avoid comparing yourself to others? No one does avoid completely, but hey.
Yeah. I still compare way too much, and I still suffer from imposter syndrome. I think especially coming out of maternity leave in a new city, I massively struggled with this kind of imposter syndrome. So I think it's never really left me. I think in terms of success, one thing that I keep coming back to is I had an acrobatics teacher who defined success as, I can't remember the exact words, but it's something about getting a greater understanding every time you do something. That is success. So success is not being able to hold a long arm hand to hand and balance that for 10 minutes the first time you do it. Success is maybe doing it and then understanding, okay, this is where the weight needs to be, or this is where my balance point is, or this is, something else about it. So I think I define success as leaving with a kind of greater understanding of whatever I engaged in. So I've had meetings here where I've had rejections about some work that I proposed or something else that I've done. And I'm going, okay, well, at least I met a new person, or I got to know that studio, got to know that area, or so I kind of try, and I guess also to protect myself a little bit, my mental health, but I try and think about success as just learning something new rather than achieving a certain kind of commission or something else. Because otherwise we're just going to walk around feeling like failures all the time, which is so not productive. So where I learn something new, and I think it's a good way to also reflect on, any kind of venture that you take. If it doesn't feel quote unquote successful because you didn't get the job, or you didn't get the commission, or you didn't get the whatever it was. So just kind of sit with, okay, well, what did I what did I get from this? Like, what did I learn from this? Whether that's meeting another person that maybe leads to work down the line, or getting to know a new studio, or whatever it might be. Yeah, I think it's really useful to maybe redefine success, especially in, I mean, any kind of arts industry, I guess, but especially in dance that I work in, that can feel quite competitive, and sometimes veering on toxicity a little bit, to redefine success. Yeah.
I love that. Thanks so much, Julie. Thanks again for sharing your time with us. Do you have a website or account, social media that people can find you and follow your work, or maybe get in touch? Like, how can people find you essentially in this big online world?
I have a website that needs updating, disclaimer, which is just my name, juliehavelund.com. And then on socials, I'm at Julie Havelund. So keeping it very simple.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Julie. Thanks for everyone who joined us. And I'll see you all on our next Q&A. And Julie, thanks again for being a part of our program. And we'll speak soon. And thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank you.